So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning or afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from. Today we're here to talk about electronic incentives, and we're really excited to introduce our guests today. The description of our session is on the right side of the screen here. And some of you might be reading this description and asking questions like, what is an administrative portal? What is a digital wallet? How do I use electronic benefits? And I've been getting a handful of those questions in the past week from you all, and I hope today that I know you're in good hands with Amy and Josh, and they're going to explain their system to you, and I hope that it helps you kind of contextualize what these new technologies are in relation to your farmers markets. So big welcome to Josh and Amy, and I'll introduce them in just a minute. But first, just a couple announcements. A quick introduction of FMC. Many of you know us. We're an organization that's member-based, and we're here to support market operators. Our goal is that we can, help strengthen farmers markets across the U.S. So you all can do what you do best, which is serving your communities, as well as serving farmers. So we share resources, we support markets with advocacy, and we serve as a facilitated network between market managers and other peers doing this work. And then one final quick announcement, FMC and our partners have been working, primarily our partners have been working on this anti-racist farmers market toolkit to really ensure that farmers markets are welcoming spaces. And we're really excited to announce this toolkit being launched in the last couple of weeks. And I'll drop a link in the chat if you're interested in downloading this toolkit and learning more. So with that, let's get started. I want to introduce Amy and Josh. So I'm going to toggle back to that slide. There we go. So first I'll introduce Josh. Josh is the president and founder of the Novo group. He's focused on introducing innovative products and integrating new technologies into the health and human services industry. With over 20 years of experience in systems design, product development, and operational improvements for state and federal government. He's also worked with large private sector organizations. And under his leadership, Novo group has been developing modern and efficient point of sale systems that facilitate the acceptance and processing of government EBT transfer. As the founder and former president of Transaction Processing Specialists, he also managed the creation of the EPIC system, which is the first web-based transaction processing system designed for electronic payment systems. So big thanks to Josh for joining us today. Appreciate you being here. Next, Amy. So Amy Crone is the project manager for Marketlink, which many of you have likely heard of it, as well as TotilPay. Their national initiative developed in collaboration with the USDA to increase acceptance of SNAP at farmers markets and by direct marketing farmers. Marketlink's a program of the NAFMNP, which is the National Association of Farmers Market Nutrition Programs. They're the only app-based means of accepting SNAP available today. Since its start in 2013, they've enabled sales of more than $71 million in SNAP and more than $131 million nationwide in total sales by farmers markets and direct marketing farmers. Amy was formerly the executive director of the Maryland Farmers Market Association, a nonprofit organization that she founded in 2012. Amy lives on a small diversified farm in Maryland with her husband and 2 kids. So Amy and Josh are, experts in this topic, and we're really excited to host them today. They're going to share about 45-minute presentation, and then we'll open it up at the end for questions. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and turn it over to you, Amy.
Great. Thank you very much for that introduction. And thank you everyone for joining today. It's great to see where everyone is from. Lots of familiar names there in the chat. So hello to those of you that I know, and I look forward to meeting those of you that I haven't met yet in the coming weeks, days, and years. Hopefully we'll all be able to get together again at conferences and such going forward. So I'm going to start out. I will share my screen, and I'm just going to go over kind of the high-level overview of how we have arrived at providing the solution. And then Josh will take it over from there and give us the nitty-gritty of all of the TIM system. I can't remember if Katie mentioned or not, but if you can just put your questions. Are we using the Q&A function, Katie, for questions, just to keep it cleaner, maybe?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thanks, Amy. Yeah, feel free to add your questions into the Q&A and keep introducing yourselves in the chat if you prefer to split it up that way.
Yeah, that would be great. Because I think what we'll do is save the questions until the end. So go ahead and enter them in as you think of them, and then we'll go back through and make sure that we answer everyone's questions again at the end, just to make sure that we get all of the overview information and the detailed information out to you all first, and then answer your specific questions towards the end. So without further ado, that was already a great introduction by Katie about our program called Marketlink, and let's see if I can, there we go. The National Association of Farmers Market Nutrition Programs, or NAFMNP, is the organization that has been overseeing this work for the past many years. NAFMNP was started in the early 1990s, hand in hand with the farmers market nutrition programs. So the organization is actually made up of those that administer the programs across the country. So in some states, as you all know, that might be the agriculture department, or with regards to WIC, it could be the health department or the seniors point of contact as well. So it's a diverse group of folks that really are working at the grassroots level with regards to federal nutrition benefits programs. And Marketlink came out of NAFMNP as a program in 2013 and 2014, when the association decided to submit for the what's colloquially called free equipment grant at that time. It is free equipment to be able to accept SNAP. So that's when the idea for Marketlink came about, which is to have a larger umbrella under which all of this technology access for federal benefits falls. The ultimate goal is to streamline all of these programs and ensure that there is an efficient, smooth way for both participants to utilize their benefits, and then also for farmers and markets to accept those benefits. This is a team. The NAFMNP, as I mentioned, of course, is made up of all of the FMNP representatives across the country, but the Marketlink team is what you see on the map with the green stars. We are across the country. We have regional representatives that can assist with the submission of the SNAP application, and also other technical assistance with regards to getting equipment for that. And all of this is key because it's the same equipment for the TIMS program as well, which you'll see going forward. Again, to reiterate, we are trying to efficiently coordinate all of the programs so that there's one device through which you can accept all programs, and everything is app-based so that it is easy to be able to accept all of these different tender types at the market or at your farm stand if you're a direct marketing farmer. The Food and Nutrition Service obviously is our USDA partner. They are headquartered in the DC area. And then Novo Group that Josh is representing today is down in Texas. Just a brief history to kind of highlight how we've gotten here. NAFMNP was awarded the first free equipment grant back in 2013. At that point in time, the Mobile Market Plus app was launched. It's still the only app through which SNAP can be accepted, but it is now called the TotilPay Go app. It's also a whole suite of services. So there are other apps and companion apps that work within the TotilPay universe, which Josh can go over if folks are interested in more of those details as well. Throughout the 2016 to 2019 period, other contractors held the grant, including FMC, as many of you know. And Novo Group continued to provide equipment and be able to process SNAP through their technology solutions. In 2019, NAFMNP was awarded the cooperative agreement for, again, the provision of free equipment and technical assistance to accept SNAP. But an important provision in the 2019 grant was the inclusion of a means to shift the farmers market nutrition program to an electronic program. This was obviously pre-pandemic in 2019, but already at that point in time, it was clear that paper checks and kind of the older systems were going to go by the wayside. And as we've seen in the last few years, many of the checking companies actually are no longer interested in providing those checks for programs. So state programs are looking to shift to an electronic solution, which is how TIMS was originally developed. Then finally in 2021, NAFMNP was awarded the online SNAP grant to provide a means for direct marketing farmers and farmers markets to accept SNAP via an e-commerce portal online. So that is a distinct project that is obviously ongoing currently, but parallel to this one. But all of this is to say, again, the Marketlink umbrella is the means by which NAFMNP is trying to meet the needs of direct marketing farmers and farmers markets across the country. just a quick summary of what we've been able to accomplish to date, since it is pretty amazing that we have been able to foster $71 million in SNAP redemptions and more than 60 million redeemed in credit and debit by farmers and markets through the platform. And since the start of the 2019 grant, we've been assisting farmers and markets to become SNAP authorized. We've sent out thousands of sets of equipment. And again, we've been redeeming SNAP, seeing the redemption of SNAP by farmers and markets across the country. I mentioned this before, but again, all of these programs we're working to accept through the same platform, including EWIC as well. We're working to enable the acceptance of EWIC across the country through the TotilPay Go app as well. And in some places, it is actually currently available to be processed. So overall, we are developing solutions for all electronic programs, whether it be the federal benefit programs or incentive programs. And as I mentioned, we are piloting this electronic FMNP idea in different states. This again kind of covers everything that we've gone over already. The only additional piece that's listed here is the My Marketlink app, which we will see in a moment from Josh. And the way that it works at a super high level is that the TIMS system is a mobile wallet that a participant has on their My Marketlink app, which they redeem through the TotilPay Go app. So a farmer has a TotilPay Go app, they redeem, they accept the QR code from the customer that provides it to them by showing them the My Marketlink app, and the TIM system enables all of those payments to be processed. And with that, I will actually turn it over to Josh to walk us through step by step what TIMS actually looks like and how the system works.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. And Katie, thanks for that introduction. It was pretty long. I'll try to shorten that in the future. But let me share my screen here, and we can get started. Yeah, one more thing, Josh. So I'm going to talk about My Marketlink and TIMS. TIMS stands for TotilPay Incentive Management System. And My Marketlink would be the recipient app that beneficiaries use to both track their system or track their benefits, track their activity, find merchants and other things, which I'll talk about. In general, TIMS was built, as Amy mentioned, with the initial purpose of supporting the migration from farmers market nutrition program from paper to electronic. But when we look closer at the requirements and the landscape of what was going on with payments in general, we decided to expand that. So TIMS is actually built to hold any freestanding program. So it could be farmers market nutrition program. It could be a GusNIP program. It could be senior farmers market nutrition program. It could be a to be determined, but what we've built is an infrastructure that allows you to easily set up and distribute, and I think most importantly, track the issuance and the redemption of those incentives or benefits, whatever you want to call them, in real time. The steps up here are pretty straightforward. You know, from setting up the program to paying the merchants via ACH, and all of the steps in between. If you've worked with EBT systems, these will seem familiar, and we built it with that in mind, because a lot of the agencies that we're talking to, as well as the private and public sector groups, are familiar with that process. We've also built this so that it can interface directly with an MIS system if your program is at that level of maturity. But if not, we've also created a user portal that will allow you to manage and issue benefits, create recipients and everything from the portal. So you don't have to have that level of technology to use TIMS. We talk about TIMS as a singular thing, but the reality is it is made up of several pieces, right? As I've already talked about, and I'll show the program management via web portal, We have our merchants using TotilPay, and that could be TotilPay Go, it could be TotilPay Register as their point of sale. And then you also have the recipients using my Marketlink app. And finally, all of this is tied together through our gateway for both settlement and reporting. I think Amy touched on this. It's just a slide that shows the comparison of a paper versus electronic. And I think most of you guys are familiar with this, so I'm just going to kind of skip past the slide. From an administrative standpoint, as well as a recipient standpoint, I think one of the big pieces is the recipient portal, right? So what it is built for is you can go in and manage this program, which I've already talked about. You're able to manage recipients, and that includes creation, modification, as well as benefit issuance, both management. You can modify, and once it's done, you can see the activity that has happened at a benefit level, as well as the merchants that are part of your program. You can enroll them, you could de-enroll them, you can look at their activity, you could update their information. And all of this is permission driven. So just kind of a little bit of disclaimer, I'm going to show you effectively a sysadmin level, but if you've got different tiers within your organization and you want folks that can be read only, or you want folks that could be only see certain functions within this portal, that's all doable. The My Marketlink app, which had an earlier iteration where it was really just a kind of a app that helps you find locations of merchants, has been redone. And what we've created is we took those same functions, added to them, and we created the first wallet that is built specifically for government benefit programs. So Farmers Market Nutrition Program, you see one up here that's Farm to Families, right? Any of these government programs or non-government programs, incentives, can be managed with inside this. So just in the way that many of us use our Apple Wallet or Square Cash or Google Pay, this is built for that. As you can see, we've also included the functionality so that when SNAP is ready to move forward with mobile payments, this will fit right in and be able to use, as well as EWIC, because we're already doing that on our TotilPay terminal. So integrating the two made a lot of sense. Transaction history, that's kind of a commonly expected functionality, but it is in here. And again, that can cut down on cost of calls to VRUs, inquiries at stores, inquiries at the farmer's market manager table. All of your information is available to them at any time in real time. You can find locations for markets that are participating in the programs that you're enrolled with. Obviously click on it and get directions. And finally, there's a messaging center that's built in so that you're notified as a recipient if your benefit's going to expire soon, or you guys can read, password changes, any kind of account level notifications. You can also customize this, which I'll show you in the portal, as to whether you want to see this, you want to get a text message or an email, but it's always going to be present within the app. And finally, as Amy kind of alluded to, when we looked at the best way to do this, because there's a lot of great technologies out there for mobile payments, we settled on QR codes because one, we know that we're competing here with a cost of paper. So you don't want to issue cards and some of these other ones that it can be a little bit more expensive. We need something that was ubiquitous and secure. So with that, I'm going to actually show you the portal and its functionality. But before I do that, I kind of wanted to just play a little video as I walk through it. And I put this on here because it allows me to talk while while it's going on and not have to juggle two different devices. On the right-hand side, you'll see my Marketlink. On the left-hand side is TotilPay Go. And what this is showing you is an actual interaction between the two devices. So if you think about my Marketlink, they're the ones that have the app in hand, and the farmer's market or direct marketing farmer, or any other merchant for that matter, could have it there. So when you log in, you're going to see the programs that you have benefits for. You're going to shop. You're going to say, okay, I'm ready to check out. The merchant just simply taps on the Tim's button, and we'll let this play because I'm talking faster than the video. They generate the QR code. They say, okay, I'm ready to check out. So you have two options there. You have the scan QR code in this. They go in, they read the QR code. That goes up through our gateway, validates that this person has the correct benefits. Everything is copacetic. Enter in the amount, submit it if you guys have used Go, and the transaction is approved. I'll level of surprise. What's nice is they can go back, they can print the receipt, you can text an email out of our app, but you can also go back to it and you'll see that that transaction is automatically generated. Before I go forward, the first question we get whenever we talk with groups about this is, what about folks who don't have smartphones, or they're not willing or able to use them, or they don't have them at the point of sale, at the market, right? We've accommodated that in the design, and I'm gonna show you. So there's two real options. We kind of classify those users as non-app users, but it doesn't mean they don't use the app. It could just mean that they don't have one there that day, right? So what we've done is we've created the ability, and I'll show you how this works in the portal, to create a QR code. Now that QR code can be a one-time QR code. That QR code could be a one that's issued. We've talked with folks who want it printed on like card stock. We've talked with folks who had the idea of printing it at the market. We're agnostic as far as that goes. We'll work with you on the program to figure out what works best for you. But the system allows you to generate these QR codes to be distributed. And I'm just using that with air quotes. So what you see now, my dog in the background, is a QR code that I printed out on a label maker in my office. So you can envision this being at the market where they can't, the cardholder or the recipient doesn't have their phone or isn't part of it. It's the same process after that. They go through, they edit it, and again, I'm gonna save time for questions. I'm gonna cut to the chase, the transaction gets approved. What I do wanna show is that if, let's just say they didn't have their device or somebody else was using it, that activity is still recorded and it's still available to be looked up both on the portal as well as your device. And finally, the last scenario that we tried to accommodate was an instance where, let's just say that the person has a device, but their camera's not working for any number of reasons. So they're not able to scan that QR code. So if you remember back to the original one, there's a point where it says enter transaction ID or scan the QR code. And then on the My Marketlink, there's code not scanning, they can tap here. We'll generate a transaction ID for that particular purchase. And just like you do a manual card entry today with pretty much any POS solution, you can do that here. So the reason I wanted to show you this is that's always the first question we get. And two, just to let you know that we've kind of thought through most of the scenarios. And with that, I'm going to switch over to the portal and look very quickly at it from two perspectives, from the program administrator and from the beneficiary level. And then I can bring all this back up. And again, I'll show you before the transaction gets approved. I can bring all this back up in the Q&A section if people want to see it. So I'm going to log in here as the administrator. What you see is a mock-up dashboard. Again, this kind of depends on your program, but what we've put up there are what we believe to be some key metrics that program administrators would want to see. And unlike a lot of the programs today, you get this stuff either in some cases after the program is finished, or maybe it's monthly, or maybe it's weekly. The great thing about this is it's built to show it to you in real time. And in here, you can see along the top menu, you can go through, look at the recipients, and these are all wildcard searches. So I can actually go through and search by program. I can find the recipient that I want to manage, dig down into there, see their info. Again, if I'm privileged. If I'm not, then you wouldn't. I can go through and see this person's benefits. I can dig down on them. I can notice that they're about to expire. I can go back, I can look at their transaction history, both at the program level or at the transaction type level. Let's do it at the program level, see everything here. You can dig down on that. You'll see a lot of information about it. You'll also see the physical location where the transaction occurred. Again, great data points that I think will be helpful in not only just tracking your program, but just understanding more about how and when and where your program dollars are redeemed. And then finally, I think I already touched on this. If you're going through and looking at it, the view pans. So this is where I was talking about if I needed to generate a pan for this individual, or I wanted to inactivate one that had been done before. You just simply generate a new pan, and that would be creative. Now, what happens when I hit that generate new pan button? Like I said, that's really a discussion point in the program. Do we email it to that person? Do we email it to the program administrator? Do we print it locally? Do we do several of those things? They're all on the table. We just built it so that the functionality was there. If I wanted to remove it, I just simply inactivate a prior pan. It's like you wanted to create one that was for a one-time, or they said, oh, I lost that one when you printed it last time, I need a new one. Through that, you can also look at the merchants that are participating. And again, I'm just going to touch it. If you had a beginning and an end date of your program, you can see that. You can look at the other users that are part of your program. It's really meant to be a full functioning portal for there. We also, and I should have mentioned this before earlier, is when we talk about creation of recipients or benefits or merchants, we support that in two ways. One, you can just actually simply click a button and enter in the stuff manually. If you're trying to do it, imagine at a sign-up day, or if you had this at a local office. We also support a file import for benefits, recipients, and merchants. We've got sample CSVs and Excel files. If you've seen them, you know, the files that are used to create EBT cases, it's very similar to that. And we have some flexibility there on like the data points, because we understand not every program is going to have what you normally would have in one of the larger programs. And then, so that was kind of the portal really quickly from a program administrator standpoint. I'm going to log in on this one over here as the user, much in the same way that this information is available. You can pretty much do everything on the portal that you can do on the app, with the exception of obviously creating or doing purchases. But I can click down in here. I can see my activity. I can go through, see my transaction history. I can go through and find merchants that are participating in our program. I can go through my notifications, update my profile to say I want to, you know, some of these on SMS, some of them on email. I can go through and find the devices that are active for my account. And I can see the information, security questions, all that good stuff. I think the key part is the benefits, seeing what they are, where, you know, when they expire, what the remaining benefit on that one was. And then again, looking at my transaction type, I can filter it on program, transaction type, response code, or the beginning and an end date. So if I just want to see everything, I can go through and pull up those transactions, that purchase that I saw there. That's a really, really quick overview, because I always like to have the time for discussions. And Katie, I'm not really sure how we're going to moderate that, but I'm just going to stop there and let you kind of guide us on. But I thank everybody for their time. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Yeah, there's so much here to kind of synthesize in a short amount of time, and we've got a ton of questions, which is great. So thanks for leaving plenty of time. Just really basic. One person asked which incentive this is referring to. Which benefit this app will be able to facilitate transactions. So could you talk about, if I'm understanding correctly, it's more than one. It's a range of benefits that it can handle. So could you just kind of explain that part of it to start out?
Sure. Let's just use FNMP as an example, or we could use Maryland Market Money, as another one. It's built kind of as a infrastructure to support any program type. I kind of look at it as it was built for any program that that isn't necessarily meant for an EBT card, right? If you talk about EBT programs, those are typically annual cards. They're very large scale. They need mass adaptation. And then you start looking at all of these other incentive programs, these other benefit programs that are either now on paper or they're in a disparate system on plastic or some other function. It can really be any of them, I guess is the best way to answer that. So any program that is managed by either a private entity, a public entity, and is looking for a way to move that into a real-time system would be a good candidate.
Yep. And just to chime in as well, I've been trying to keep up with everyone's questions, but the reason why this is a little bit tricky in terms of some of the questions that folks are asking is that we built this to be customizable for any given program. So if someone says, well, can I do X, Y, or Z? Sure, but that's not necessarily a core function per se, or a core defining characteristic of TIMS. It's a feature that you can manipulate. So I'm trying to see some of the questions that are specific, but essentially the way that it works is that if you have an incentive program, ABC, you would work with us to set that up. And as part of the setup process, you would say, my total match amount is this much. My customers, have these pieces of data that I'm using to identify them. My window of operation for the program is this month to this month. After this date, benefits rescind back to the pot, or all of these different pieces of the puzzle are built into the system. It's just difficult to kind of talk through every bit of any particular program until we have that one-on-one conversation with folks. So we'll certainly go through all the questions here, but just for everyone to keep in mind that if you do have specific questions as to how this system could be set up for your particular program, it's probably best to schedule a separate call with us so that we can go through and say, yes, we can do that. No, we'd have to do it this way. But overall, again, our ultimate goal is to make this usable by every program.
Yeah, thanks for that context, Amy. It's not a one size fits all kind of solution, right? Like we have some ability to customize, or they have some ability to customize. And I think it's important to remember that your programs are not all the same. So the tech isn't necessarily going to be the same either. So I think now maybe be a good time we've talked about kind of the benefits that your system can manage. Can you speak a little bit more specifically about the transaction itself? Because there's a lot of questions here about, how the QR codes could function, and especially in those markets that might not have all of their vendors using smartphones right now, or not have all of their customers using smartphones. So could you speak a little bit about the transaction itself and how it would work with that paper QR code, and
Sure.
then how the redemption works with the vendors as well?
So the QR code is really analogous to a card, right? It's a payment instrument. And whether or not you present that payment instrument on a printed piece of paper, on a phone, through a screen, or some other way, it's the same thing, right? It's no different if you're giving a credit card. If you dip the credit card, you swipe the credit card, or you type in the credit card numbers. It's all the same. So we have created different pathways for those QR codes to get in folks' hands. So you're presenting that on one side. On the other side is TotilPay. And TotilPay would allow the merchant, or like you said, it may not be the actual direct marketing farmer, it might be the market manager's table, right? So in that case, then we have to have another discussion, like, okay, am I still using tokens, and what's going on there? But certainly, that's an option to do it. But you've got those two pieces. You have My Marketlink, which is really in that case just built to present the QR code, and then you have TotilPay to receive that information, whether it's using the camera to scan that QR code, or whether you're using the keyboard to type in the transaction ID to do that. As far as settlement, to us, it's another program type. So we pay our merchants through ACH, and that's another discussion point that we have with the program, right? Because sometimes these are relatively small benefits. They're a piece of the pie for a farmer's market. So you might do a weekly ACH for this and bundle it up, as opposed to doing it daily like we do for SNAP and WIC. But all of that stuff is parameter driven, so you could do there. So the merchants are getting reimbursed. It's probably a longer discussion in the time that we have to talk about how the funding in the first place starts. But suffice to say, there's an account that the money is pulled from, and then we deliver it to the merchants.
And just to clarify, the QR code that's issued to the shopper, there's one QR code per shopper, correct? There's not multiple per benefit type, and that QR code will then trigger access to that shopper's mobile account, correct? That will call back that information.
That's a great question. So if you had the system, you had the setup where that individual, that recipient had multiple programs, right? It would actually, they would need a QR code for the individual programs, because there's no order of precedence. It's what it's called, on which we would pull from, right? I mean, could we do it technically? Yes, we could. But if you think about it, somebody has, say, FNMP, CDB, SNAP, or whatever, right? We need to know which program they want to pull that from. So the way it would be designed is that the QR, if you're doing it on the app, you just simply tap the program that you want to spend. If you had a printed one, you would have to have one for that, because there's really not a master account number. Now, just to muddy the waters even further, there are like discussions that we're having with, for the Maryland Market Money. I go back to that. That's actually funded by 3 separate streams, right? So they have, in that case, yeah, they would have a Maryland Market Money QR code, and then we track where the benefit came from, right? Was it a function of an incentive for the SNAP program? Was it a function of the incentive for the CVB? Was it a function of the incentive for FNMP? And basically the benefits have indicators on where they're from. But from the end user, they don't know that, right? To them, they just have a Maryland Market Money. And yes, in that case, they would have a single one. So again, it's the devil is in the details on all these programs, not just, it's always the case with this stuff. And so we've tried to be flexible to support both scenarios, where you've got multiple distinct programs, or you've got multiple funding sources for a separate program, or for a single program, I'm sorry.
Thanks for that, Josh. Related to the individual shopper, a few folks are asking about privacy and how new customers might sign up for the app. Could you explain sort of the entry system for new shoppers and how that would work, whether it's a walk up to the market info booth and sign up, or I think you mentioned in the demo, adding recipients by file online. So just if you could speak to how new recipient or new customers get registered with this app and get an account, either through that printed off QR code or their mobile account.
So how do they get enrolled in the program? Again, kind of depends on the program, right? If we've talked with folks who they have a master roster, right? It's people that have been approved for it, and they're on this program annually until they're not. And they're going to say, we're going to give you a file. We get the file, we process it, we send a notification to the individual saying, hey, you've been approved for this program. download the app, here's your activation code, and we walk you through all of that. In other ones, we've talked with folks who are like, well, no, I want to have a sign up day, and we're going to use our web portal and we're going to feed it to your system, or we're going to use your web portal and with a limited functionality just to get, the benefit creation, and we want to auto create a $30 benefit. Think about that like a pop-up program, right? You literally could sign folks up, set the program up in advance and say, everybody who I sign up today gets $30. I'm just making that number up. And they could, so that's how they would get in there. It's really two matters. It's coming in through the portal or it's coming in through a file, right? And then there's, little tweaks in between here and there. As far as the security goes, all of the information about this is stored in the same manner that we treat all of our merchants, all our transactions, all, stored on our secure servers. It's all encrypted. Everything in transit's encrypted. Although this wouldn't technically fall under the auspices of PCI, it's treated as if it does, because our other systems that we do with credit and debit has to be. We go through an annual PCI audit every year. We don't store any kind of PII data that is accessible anywhere. Really at that point, I kind of got to ask more questions to answer it. It's kind of silly to say it's super secure, but what I can say is, we've got, almost 20 plus years of experience in building these kind of high volume, high availability systems, and all of the lessons learned from those, as well as the best practices that are going on today, are incorporated into TIMS.
And for those shoppers, what information would a market manager or an organization need to have? Name, address, like what kind of information do you gather per new participant?
We've had some that are really bare bones, right? We'd like to have the name, mobile number, and or email, because we need to be able to communicate the activity of their system through that, right? So I start there. We've had others who said, can we add, other demographic data, things like that, so they can, build their models in there, and all that is open for discussion. But if you were just talking at a bare minimum set, I would say it's name, address, even, especially if you want to mail them something, and then you get down to email and or phone number. One of the functionality I don't think I touched on that I should have, that is this system also allows you, and it also can not allow it, but it gives you the capability if you had like a proxy, right? So if you think about it, you could link other devices, whether that be, I have 2 cell phones, or whether that be me and my significant other, or me, the grandparent and their grandchild, so they could have a instance where they had the My Marketlink and have access to those benefits. And again, that's all, it's not like, anybody can do it, right? You have to get issued a specific link, and you have to say, yes, I'm going to allow other people to do it. And just like anything else, you'll get a notification saying, hey, this device was, logged in. Is this you? Just like you do in any other system that we all have to deal with day in and day out.
Yeah, there's just so many questions here, and I know there's so much curiosity about how this would work on the ground. Could you kind of go back a little bit to the connection to SNAP? A lot of folks are curious about that. Could you explain how My Marketlink relates to a customer's SNAP card or EBT card, and then explain sort of the technology side of entering the PIN, if that's required, or what's right. different between a traditional central terminal model at a market and this electronic incentives model for SNAP?
And again, when we designed this, we did it with the concept of what the world looks like today, right? And and not saying, hey, all these people have to change anything that they're doing. So the wallet feature, I threw that SNAP in there just kind of like as eye candy, because obviously it's not allowed today to add SNAP cards into a wallet. But if you think about, that's where we're going. And I'm sorry, I got to find that oh, it's on the presentation. I was going to bring it up while we were talking about it, but it is set for a SNAP cardholder could add their card number, because that's what it is, right? That's their account number, into the wallet, just like you do today. If any of you have added credit cards to your Apple Pay or any of these others. And when you're at a point of sale, you would present, rather than have the card, you would present the QR code. And then as far as the PIN goes, you're still entering the PIN on that, whatever mechanism you're doing it. If it's TotilPay, you're going to enter it on the screen. If it's another participating point of sale type and they've got a PIN pad, you would enter it on the PIN pad, because to the EBT processor and the state who's managing those SNAP programs, to them, it's going to look like a regular transaction, except for the entry mode will say scanned instead of swiped. But basically it comes up to them just like any other SNAP purchase. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then could you then explain how the incentives are triggered through a system like this? Yeah,
so the way ours works is, you know, again, you would have to be registered to be part of the program, and the merchant has to be part of the program. So that's kind of a prerequisite. But you know, then you can set parameters and say, okay, what's my match and what's my daily limit? Those are the two kind of most common parameters. And so what happens when you do that purchase, it generates that benefit or that incentive or whatever, you know, that value, which sits in a virtual account and then can then be redeemed. It's not quite like, say, the HIP program, which is statewide, and those are similar but very different animals. And you know, I'd be happy to have another webinar to talk about the differences. But you know, what we're talking about here is more of a targeted incentive that can be redeemed at specific merchants, and you could even target it more for only be redeemable for specific items, right? Beyond just like SNAP eligible. I mean, I've seen granularity of where people talk about, well, I only want state grown fruits and vegetables to be able to be redeemed with this incentive. But it's an automated process as part of that SNAP purchase. That's how we call it loyalty, but it's an incentive program.
Great. And with that, you know, a few folks are asking about interoperability, it seems, between retailers and farmers markets. So could you share, and with that, you know, the question of who's in charge of setting this up? Is this something that, you know, market managers should be seeking you out for? Or is this something that state agencies should be seeking you out for, or a combination of both, or somewhere in the middle? So I'm just curious, number one, on the stakeholders, like who could kind of make some of these decisions, and then how might that affect sort of some of this interoperability and using it like a loyalty card that could be, you know, incentives could be earned at a grocery store and then brought to the market.
So I think all those inquiries should go to Amy. That would be great. And about those kind of things. But from an interoperability standpoint, I talk about it in two groups. One, yes, right now it is, you know, the only absolute requirement the merchant would need to be a TotilPay user, right? Because that's all that we can really code to at this point. However, we did design it so that we can expose a public API so that other point of sale systems could interface with TIMS, and then that would give them, you know, the opportunity to accept those incentives and not be use our solution, right? Because we know that's, you know, not necessarily realistic. So there's, you know, the interoperability really comes down to, are you participating in the program? And then you get into the question of what hardware and solution do you have present at that merchant, right? As far as who should be talking to it, Amy, I'll let you, you know, respond to that.
Yeah, so I think the easiest way to think of this, because I think a lot of folks might be a little bit confused, is whoever manages the program is the one that should be setting up the TIMS interface. So if that in the original case is for example, the EWIC FMNP program wants to shift to electronic benefits. So the WIC FMNP program would set up the TIM system in which they set up all their benefits. Separately, if there is a matching program, Maryland Market Money has come up as one example that we're piloting. So if Maryland Market Money wants to manage an incentive program, then they set up their TIMS portal for their program. Now, is there a beneficiary that would have both of those benefits? Yes. So in that case, that beneficiary, the participant, would have on their My Marketlink app, just as you see in this example here, they would have an FMNP benefit and they would have a Maryland Market Money benefit. Those programs are managed by different entities, but that participant can take advantage of both programs. So hopefully that helps kind of folks think through the levels in which you would set these up, and also how interoperability at the participant level. I know that's different than what the interoperability question that we were just talking about was, but in terms of helping folks understand kind of the tiers by which the logic might flow. And for all of these, again, I'm happy to have a one-on-one conversation with whomever wants, because I'm trying to keep up with the questions, but I'm not sure that we're going to get to all 50 of the ones that aren't answered. So if there's a question after this, we'll obviously share our contact information. I think many of you have it already, but just trying to, again, take it to the highest level so that the broadest understanding can happen on this call with such a diverse group of participants. Let's see.
So maybe more broadly, because we've been going through a couple of specific questions on the transaction and then the flow of information, and it does depend on this scenario, of course. One person posed a question that I think is really a great topic, is asking about an elevator speech or some motivational information that markets or advocates can then use to kind of convince stakeholders or funders that this will be a helpful tool for their markets. And then another person asked, what's the difference, or what's the benefit of using this new electronic system versus my old point of sale system? So could you speak to some of the what you see as the key administrative benefits to moving to a new technology with all of the challenges that it might bring to a market? What benefits exist within sort of the way you've set it up? And how do you see that helping market managers and helping program operators?
Sure. So there's a variety of different benefits. And just again, to kind of look to history a little bit, SNAP-EBT was a paper benefit, right? So when SNAP-EBT switched, similar conversations were happening around, how's this going to work? How can I even imagine this changing? How can I even do it? So there's always going to be growing pains with new technologies. And then with regards to the advantages of this particular one, I mean, for the FMNP programs, it's pretty clear. It's real-time tracking of data, real-time tracking of which beneficiaries are using their benefits, which are not, real-time tracking of which farmers are accepting the benefits and which are not. For those of you in the FMNP world, I'm sure you've all heard the, I don't want to say horror stories, but the incredible stories of how farmers save all of their checks and then deposit them at the end of the year. So that FMNP administrator doesn't realize that farmer Y has $3,000 worth of checks just waiting to clear. With this system, they'll know the day that that farmer accepts that benefit, what's gone through it. And it's the same principle for any incentive program. On the farmer side of the equation, their funds go directly to their bank account. On the market side of the equation, you no longer have to issue 1 million payments to 1 million different farmers and vendors. A lot of it is automated. So the biggest pieces are reducing the administrative burden, improving the reporting, and just in general, better management of the program in real time. And of course, there will be growing pains. And of course, there will be folks that will refuse to adopt it. That's the nature of technology. You'll have early adopters, you'll have late adopters, and you will have those that choose to opt out. So for those that said that, I can't see any of my farmers doing this, you might be surprised. And then at least I think we've all seen that it's always word of mouth, and always, once folks accept a new technology, then the spread of it happens much more quickly.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. It's always a challenge with anything new, and I think having the courage to try it out and encourage your community to try it out is always a good approach. We have about 5 minutes, and I want to cover a couple more questions. I'll just lay them out now so that we can kind of budget time. The first is the vendor experience. So I think a few questions here have been, well, how does the vendor receive the payment, and how do the right benefits get triggered for the right products. I also want to ask just about costs. And I know that, you've talked so much about how this is a customizable solution. So we assume that the costs will be a wide range, but if you could give any kind of insights into that. And then the third piece is a lot of folks are asking, how do I get started, or when is this going to be available? So I'm just curious if you could speak a little bit to the timeline, maybe share the pilot sites that you're working with in terms of the timeline for more widely accessible use of the TIM system.
Katie, what was the first part of the question? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I lobbed you, big one. It was about the question was, how do the right benefits get triggered for certain products from the vendor side? A lot of folks have been asking, what if my farmers don't have, or my vendors don't have a smartphone, which is the first part of that. And then the other part is, how do the right benefits get triggered for the right products?
For that one, if it's not much different than today that we have with TotilPay, right? We have models where it's at the market manager level, and they're doing some kind of token or script or whatever else. So if one thing I will point out though that is different is when you're using this solution and this portion of it, if you were just using let's just say the benefits available for a My Marketlink, then that farmer doesn't need a card reader, right? We're always trying to lessen the footprint for there. So if they're just scanning QR codes or entering in Marketlink, so that's important to note. So you could get a scenario where they're literally just using their phone and not have to bring other pieces of equipment to the table. Now, if you start accepting SNAP, that's a different story, and I think we all know what that means. As far as costs go, there's two components of the cost. There's the farmer or the market manager, would have to have a valid TotilPay subscription. The cost of that depends on the product and the length of it. Our pricing as it sits today is sitting on our website, so you can go look at that and figure that out. But again, I caveat that with sometimes the program covers that cost. We don't charge extra if, say, somebody does, like, I'm a SNAP merchant and I'm going to participate in this. To us, it's the same thing. So, you have programs like the Marketlink program that can help if that person is SNAP certified. But it's a cost. And then, to manage the program itself, really what we need to know, we only charge for this is how we're building it now, right? Because this is a new system, but we took the EBT model, right? So it's active cases. So if you have a recipient who has or had a benefit in a given month, then it would be, they would be billable. But the great thing about that is if you get somebody who signs up and doesn't do anything and doesn't get a benefit, then you're not going to be billed for that. Conversely, if you get somebody who signs up and they spend their whole benefit in a given month and they don't get anything the next year, you're not going to be charged for there. What's the cost on that? That's where the devil is, right? We need to sit down and say, okay, how often are we going to pay our merchants? You're going to do this once a week? Okay, that's there. Are you going to, how many do we have, right? Is it there? There was one question to float by: would the recipient be charged anything? And our model is no, right? So we're not going to charge a per user app or sell this app. It's available. Well, it's not been released, but it'll be on the Android or the Apple Store, and it's free app. So they're not going to bear any of the costs. And I know I kind of jumped around in your answers there, but I think and I answered them all, or I touched on it, maybe not satisfactorily. And then timeline, send us an email and let's go. The system's there. It gets into, oh, I need this functionality for my program. And we can say either, okay, this is how we can do it today and we can do it, or no, it's got to be something that's completely separate. Oh, products. I know we're short on time. I'm sorry. That really comes down to your point of sale system, and to whether or not you want to mark a product as eligible for a given program. Just like today, if you're going to do it as SNAP or something else, TotilPay Go, as it's constructed, is really built where it's the vendor who's saying these are eligible, right? Just like today, if you do a SNAP purchase, you're certifying that you're only selling SNAP, that only SNAP eligible items were on there. So that's all I could do.
Yeah, thanks for that, Josh. I appreciate it. Yeah, so we're at time. I think we'll try to wrap up out of respect for everyone's time. Oh, I guess just one last question, because this did come up a few times, is what about, offline scenarios? I think market managers are used to having to do a manual voucher clearing, and I know they've loved that feature on the TotilPay Go system. So could you kind of share if this system is even possible to be run in an offline scenario or with an internet outage of some kind?
Yeah, it's a good question, and in all honesty, you could be offline in the sense that the cardholder could bring a printed QR code to it, but the assumption is the way it's designed is the merchant would be connected, right? However that connection takes place, it's just simply because this isn't like SNAP where, you've got a big giant organizational infrastructure behind it. And so you can do a voucher and then, merchants get into the idea of, well, am I assuming that liability and things like that. These, the programs that we are typically dealing with are going to be, they're not going to have a VRU, right? That you can call and get a authorization, most likely. So, the premise is it would need to be, the merchant side of the house would need to be online.
Okay, got it. Yeah, well, I know you all have so many more questions, and I just want to thank Josh and Amy for doing their best to answer as many as possible during this time. We'd love to do what we can at FMC and across the Nutrition Incentive Hub to help connect you all with the right people. So if you have more questions, you can either reach out to us and we can pass them along, or directly to Amy and Josh, who will have the most accurate information. I do want to just mention we are hoping to publish a resource very soon that kind of shares a couple other alternatives to the TIM system. And there's a lot of different developers who are working on this problem. There's a huge challenge of managing all these different incentive programs. And each of the systems has different strengths and limitations and different costs. So we're here to help you kind of make sense of your options and help you make the right informed choice when you're ready, and kind of support markets along the way. So please don't be a stranger. Reach out to Joe Lusowski from MIFMA or me, and don't hesitate to reach out to Josh and Amy. I'm going to volunteer you for that, I guess. You did say you were willing to meet with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I'm sorry we couldn't get to the still 60 questions that are open, but please do email me, follow up, schedule a call. We're happy to walk through it for you. I know that this is hard to wrap your brain around, especially seeing it for the first time and seeing it digitally rather than in person. So we're happy to have as many conversations as needed. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, and I can just say I've watched so many demos in the last 6 months, and I still learn something new every time I see it. And I think a lot of this is just, continuing to become more familiar with these terms and with, how the systems will function, both in similarity to how the central terminal model works for us all, as well as some of the different, changes that might help make some things easier, might make some things a little bit more challenging, but is ultimately, a really exciting new innovation. So yeah, thanks so much. And I will, I'll leave it at that. Please feel free to send me an email. I will drop my email in the chat if you have any specific follow-up questions, and we'll be publishing this, the recording very soon. So you'll be able to kind of go back and rewind and say, what did Josh say at that point? Because I really want to listen to that again. So you'll be able to get some clarity there as well.
And we'll share our slides too.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks. Have a great day.